The soft glow of the sunset spilled through the glass windows of the small cafe where Elara Choi sat, nervously twisting her fingers. Her heart was heavy, a weight she carried for too long. Mr. Choi, her beloved grandfather, had always been her anchor. After losing her parents, he was the one who held her together. And now, his health was failing. His last wish had shaken her. "Elara, I want to see you married before I go." It wasn't that simple. Love was complicated, and marriage? Even more so. She wasn't ready. But as her grandfather's words echoed in her ears, she felt cornered by time itself. Suddenly, a familiar face walked in, Logan Pierce, her charming, playful university friend who never took anything seriously. His smile could brighten the darkest day, but today, Elara saw him in a different light. Gathering her courage, she stood up and walked toward him, her hands trembling. "Logan," she whispered, her voice barely holding steady. "Will you marry me?" His eyes widened in shock, but soon a mischievous grin spread across his face. "Elara, are you serious? You want me to be your husband?" "Yes. Please, say yes." He laughed playfully, ruffling her hair. "Well, why not? But, let's get married when we're 30, okay?" Elara forced a smile, but her heart sank. As Logan walked away, her smile faded. Behind her strong facade, her heart was breaking. Turning to leave, she collided straight into a tall stranger, spilling his coffee. "Watch where you're going," the man snapped, his sharp suit and colder-than-ice stare sending chills down her spine. "Excuse me," she glared back, standing her ground. But before she could step back, a car raced past them. The man yanked her close, pulling her out of harm's way, and their lips accidentally met in a breathtaking, accidental kiss. Elara's cheeks burned as she shoved him away. "You call that saving someone?" He smirked, brushing his suit casually. "Perhaps next time, you'll look where you're going, miss." "Elara. Elara Choi." "Elara," he repeated with a sly smile. "I'm Aiden. Aiden Cross. Maybe we'll meet again, if you're not too busy proposing to strangers." And with that, he walked away, leaving Elara breathless, angry, and a little confused. Elara couldn't shake Aiden Cross from her mind. His sharp eyes, the way he smirked, and that unintentional, lingering kiss, it all haunted her. It was just an accident, right? Then why did her heart race every time she replayed it? The next day, as she sat in the university lecture hall, the murmur of students filled the air. But her thoughts were tangled, between her grandfather's wish, Logan's playful answer, and that mysterious Aiden Cross. Suddenly, the professor's voice broke through her thoughts. "Class, please give your attention. Today, we have a special guest lecturer joining us for this semester." Elara looked up, curious, and froze. Standing confidently at the front, with a calm and poised expression, was Aiden Cross himself. "Good morning, I'm Aiden Cross. I'll be working with you this semester." The pen slipped from Elara's hand as her cheeks flushed in disbelief. "Oh no," she whispered to herself, hiding behind her notebook. His eyes scanned the room, pausing on her for a split second, a glint of recognition in his gaze, before moving on. "And you?" Aiden's voice suddenly turned sharp as he pointed right at her. "You there, the one hiding behind the book. What's your name?" Elara's heart thudded painfully. "Elara Choi," she answered, her voice barely above a whisper. Aiden's lips twitched into a smirk. "Miss Choi, I didn't know people still tried to absorb knowledge through osmosis by hugging their books." The class erupted in laughter while Elara's cheeks burned. "Since you seem so attached to your book, why don't you enlighten us and explain what's on page 108, he added with a sly smile, crossing his arms. She fumbled through her book, her hands trembling as she turned to page 108. But before she could even begin, Aiden leaned casually against the desk. "Relax, Miss Choi. Consider this my way of saying hello. Elara glared at him, realizing he wasn't going to let her forget yesterday's encounter. When the lecture ended, Elara quickly packed her things and rushed out of the classroom. But just as she reached the exit, a voice called out. "Miss Choi," Aiden said, stopping her in her tracks. She turned, trying to keep her composure. "About yesterday, do you always crash into strangers and steal kisses?" he asked, stepping closer. Her face flushed. "I should ask you the same thing. You were the one who pulled me." He smirked again, tilting his head. "Maybe. But I don't regret it." Elara's breath caught in her throat. "Stay out of my way, Professor Cross," she muttered before turning on her heel and walking away, her heart pounding. From behind, Aiden watched her go, a playful smile tugging at his lips. "I think we'll be seeing a lot more of each other, Elara," he whispered to himself, before heading down the hall. Elara tried to ignore the way Aiden's teasing words replayed in her mind throughout the rest of the day. She had a lot on her plate, exams to study for, her part-time job to attend to, and her family's expectations hanging over her like a cloud. The last thing she needed was another complication, especially one that involved a man who had the uncanny ability to make her heart race with just a glance. Later that evening, she was in the library, her head buried in textbooks, trying to focus. She was working on a project for one of her business courses when she felt an eerie sense of being watched. Looking up, she froze. Standing by the door was Aiden. "What are you doing here?" Elara asked, her voice a little more defensive than she intended. Aiden walked toward her with that same confident, almost predatory stride. "You think I'd miss an opportunity to see you again," he said, his tone laced with teasing. Elara rolled her eyes, trying not to let his charm affect her. "I don't know what you want from me, Aiden. But I don't have time for this." "I'm not here to waste your time," he said, pulling out a chair across from her and sitting down. "Actually, I'm here to offer you something." Elara raised an eyebrow. "What could you possibly offer me?" Aiden leaned forward, his eyes glinting with a mix of amusement and mystery. "How would you like a job offer?" he asked, his voice dropping to a more serious tone. "Not just any job. I want you to be my personal assistant for the summer." Elara blinked, stunned. "Your personal assistant?" she repeated, incredulity in her voice. "Are you serious?" "I am," he said, his smile returning. "I've been looking for someone smart, capable, someone who can handle my schedule and keep up with me. I've been watching you, and you fit the bill." "Watch me?" Elara asked, feeling a little unnerved. "What do you mean?" "I've been paying attention to how you handle your work," he replied smoothly, "and I think you're the right person for the job." Elara shook her head. "I don't need a job from you, Aiden. You may think you can throw your weight around, but I have my own plans." Aiden's eyes darkened for a moment, and Elara couldn't help but notice the shift in his demeanor. "I didn't expect you to be so stubborn," he said, almost like a challenge. "But I'm not asking. Consider it an offer you can't refuse." Elara stood up, her heart pounding. "I don't want any part of your games, Aiden," she snapped, her voice firm. Aiden stood as well, walking toward her, his presence imposing. He was so close now that she could feel his breath on her skin. "You think you have it all figured out, Elara? That you're in control?" He reached out, his hand brushing against hers. "You're more involved in this than you think." Before she could respond, he turned on his heel and walked out of the library, leaving her standing there, more confused than ever. That night, as Elara lay in bed, she couldn't stop thinking about the offer. She didn't want to admit it, but part of her was intrigued. There was something magnetic about Aiden Cross, something that kept pulling her back. The next day, she found herself walking into his office, against her better judgment. She was about to turn around when the door opened, and there he stood, with that infuriating yet irresistible smirk on his face. "You came," he said, voice full of amusement. Elara crossed her arms. I came to tell you that I won't be your personal assistant. You can't just throw money and favors at people and expect them to bow down to you. Aiden leaned against his desk, watching her closely. I never said you had to bow down. But this offer isn't just about money. It's about opportunity. Elara felt the weight of his words. Opportunity for what? He straightened up, taking a step toward her. For everything. You want to make something of yourself, don't you? This job could be the start of something big, Elara. She met his gaze, wondering if he was being serious or just playing some game. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw something else, a glimmer of sincerity. Think about it, he said softly. I won't pressure you. But I'm here when you're ready. With that, he turned and walked back to his desk, leaving her standing there, caught between logic and something far more complicated. The next few days were a blur of indecision. Elara couldn't stop thinking about Aiden's offer. She tried to push it out of her mind, throwing herself into her studies and spending long hours at the library, but the more she thought about it, the more she realized that the opportunity Aiden was offering was something she couldn't ignore. She knew she needed a job, especially after her summer internship plans fell through. The extra income would ease some of the financial pressure her family constantly placed on her. But then again, working for someone like Aiden Cross, who was charming, charismatic, and a little too used to getting what he wanted, seemed like opening a door to trouble. The man had a way of getting under her skin, and she wasn't sure whether it was his confidence or something else entirely that kept pulling her in. It wasn't until Friday afternoon that she made her decision. She walked into his office with her heart beating faster than she cared to admit. Aiden was standing by the window, his back to her, looking out over the city. I've thought about your offer, Elara said, trying to sound composed despite the storm of emotions churning in her chest. Aiden turned around, a look of curiosity in his eyes. And? I'm not saying yes yet, but I'm willing to talk about it, she said, crossing her arms defensively. Aiden's lips curled into a satisfied smile, his eyes gleaming with something Elara couldn't quite place. I knew you'd come around. She felt a wave of irritation sweep through her but didn't let it show. I'm not doing this for you, Aiden. I have my reasons. Of course, he said smoothly, his voice laced with understanding, but his expression was unreadable. I didn't expect you to make a decision just like that. But I'm glad you're considering it. Let's talk about the details. As they sat across from each other, Aiden outlined the responsibilities in a manner that was so casual, it almost felt like they were discussing something as simple as a dinner plan. But Elara knew better. He was offering her something more than just a job, he was offering her a chance to be a part of his world, a world filled with high stakes and even higher expectations. But what would it mean for her? She could already feel the tension brewing between them. Every time their eyes met, it was like an unspoken challenge, a power struggle that neither of them had yet to acknowledge. Elara didn't know whether it was because of their personal differences or the undeniable attraction that simmered beneath the surface, but something was shifting between them. When the meeting ended, Elara found herself standing by the door, a sense of unease in her chest. Aiden had been charming, confident, and relentless. He had made it clear that she had a place in his world, but at what cost? I'll give you some time to think, Aiden said as she reached for the door handle, his voice softer than usual, though still carrying that underlying intensity. Elara paused, turning slightly to look at him. And if I say yes? Aiden's eyes darkened for a moment, and he stepped closer. Then we'll see where it takes us. His words sent a shiver down her spine, and before she could gather her thoughts, she opened the door and walked out, feeling both relieved and inexplicably drawn to him. The next day, Elara was walking across the university campus when she saw Aiden again. He was leaning casually against his black sports car, talking with a group of students. The moment he saw her, his eyes locked onto hers, and a sly smile curled on his lips. Elara, he called, stepping forward. I was hoping to catch you. She fought the urge to roll her eyes. I told you I'd think about it. And? His voice was smooth, expectant. I haven't decided yet, she said, feeling a flicker of irritation. But I'll let you know soon. Aiden seemed to consider her response for a moment before stepping even closer. I'm giving you time, Elara. But don't take too long. Opportunities like this don't come around often. Elara swallowed hard. Was he offering her the chance of a lifetime, or was this just another game to him? Don't worry, she said curtly. I'll make up my mind. Aiden's smile deepened, but there was something else in his gaze, something almost unreadable. I'll be waiting. Later that night, Elara couldn't shake the feeling that her decision was going to change everything. The last few days had been a whirlwind of emotions, and she knew she had to make a choice soon. Was she willing to enter Aiden's world, with all its complications and dangers? Or would she stay in her comfortable bubble, away from the storm that was sure to follow? But something told her that no matter what she chose, she was already too far in. Elara paced in her small apartment, the contract in her hand trembling slightly. She had finally agreed to Aiden's offer, but under one condition: if she took the job, there would be clear boundaries. Yet, when Aiden sent over the job contract, she nearly dropped it when she read the title. Private Agreement of Marriage, Aiden Cross and Elara Choi. Her eyes darted across the page. A marriage arrangement for mutual benefit. Conditions for confidentiality, behavior, and public image are listed below. This is not a job offer, Elara muttered, her hands shaking. Just then, her phone buzzed. Aiden. Have you read it? His smooth voice rolled through the line. You call this a job offer? Elara nearly shouted. Are you insane? His laugh was low and calm. Not insane. Practical. You need security, I need a wife. We both win. I can't just marry you, she stammered. Then don't. He sounded unfazed. But think about it. You want to protect your grandfather's wish, don't you? You wanted someone reliable, and let's be honest, Elara, his voice softened, I've already stepped into your life more than you realize. She sank onto the couch, rubbing her forehead. This isn't about love, Elara, Aiden added firmly. It's about protecting what matters to us both. You help me, I help you. And when people ask why we got married, she shot back. We'll say we fell in love fast. And when it's over, she whispered. Then we walk away. But until then, we protect each other. His words echoed in her heart. After a long pause, she finally said, I'll think about it. A week later. Elara sat in a private cafe, nervously fidgeting with a pen as she waited for Aiden. When he arrived, wearing a perfectly tailored suit, she almost forgot how to speak. Elara, he greeted, sitting down smoothly. Have you made up your mind? She exhaled shakily, pulling out the signed contract. If we do this, Aiden, we follow my rules too, she said firmly. No sleeping in the same bed. No fake affection unless necessary. And we keep it secret from everyone, including my grandfather, until the right time. He smirked but took the contract. Deal. But you'll regret that no affection rule, he teased. She glared. Don't push me, Aiden. But he simply chuckled, leaning back in his chair. Shall we set a date, Mrs. Cross? Elara blushed but nodded. Let's get this over with. Weeks later, a small, private ceremony was held in Aiden's luxurious estate. Only a judge, Aiden's parents, and Elara's grandfather were present. Elara's heart pounded as she walked down the short aisle in a simple yet elegant white dress. Her grandfather beamed with pride, and seeing his joy gave her strength. When she reached Aiden, he held out his hand. You ready? He whispered, softer than she expected. Are you? She whispered back. I'm always ready, he said, a faint smile playing on his lips. The vows were quick, formal. But when the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Elara froze. Aiden leaned in, cupping her cheek gently. "We need to make it look real," he murmured against her skin before pressing a soft, lingering kiss to her lips. To her surprise, her heart skipped a beat. As their lips touched, her fingers unconsciously gripped his suit, feeling the warmth of his body. When they finally pulled away, her cheeks were flushed. "Perfect," he whispered. "You're a natural." She glared up at him. "Don't get used to it." But Aiden only chuckled. Back at the house, Aiden opened the door to their shared bedroom, gesturing for her to enter first. Elara looked around. A king-sized bed dominated the room. "Where am I sleeping?" she asked, crossing her arms. He shrugged casually. "The bed is big enough. But don't worry, I'll stay on my side, unless you ask otherwise." She threw him a pillow. "You can sleep on the couch." Aiden caught the pillow easily, smirking. "Come on, Elara. I don't bite, unless you want me to." Rolling her eyes, she muttered, "You're impossible." But as she climbed into bed, staying carefully to her side, she realized something. It felt strangely safe having Aiden there, even if he teased her relentlessly. Before turning off the light, he looked over at her. "You made the right choice, Elara," he said softly, more serious than she had ever heard him. "Good night, Aiden," she whispered. "Good night, wife." And as the night deepened, neither of them could sleep, both secretly wondering if this contract marriage might be something much deeper than they ever imagined. It had been a week since their wedding, and Elara still couldn't shake the feeling that she was living in a strange dream. A contract marriage. Aiden Cross. Nothing about this was normal, but the more time she spent in his world, the more she realized how out of control everything was becoming. She had expected this arrangement to stay cold, transactional. But things were shifting. Every morning, Aiden greeted her with a calm smile that was both warm and unsettling, like he knew something she didn't. And at night, when they shared that same bed, her body reacted to his presence, even if she didn't want it to. On the morning of the 7th day after their wedding, Elara stood in the kitchen, pouring herself a cup of coffee. Aiden had already left for work, and she relished the silence of the house. She had to admit, it wasn't as bad as she thought. Aiden had kept to his word, no unnecessary touches, no overwhelming affection. They both stayed on opposite sides of the bed. Yet, despite this, something hung between them, an unspoken tension that she couldn't ignore. She was too aware of him. She had caught herself looking at him when he thought she wasn't, admiring the way his eyes glinted with hidden thoughts, the way he moved through the world with such confidence. Every word he spoke seemed calculated, but there was something behind his cool demeanor that intrigued her. Suddenly, her phone buzzed, breaking her thoughts. It was a message from Aiden. "Aiden Cross, meet me at the office. I need you to be there in an hour." She frowned. She wasn't supposed to be part of his work life, that was the deal. But then again, they were married now, in name at least. Maybe this wasn't just about the contract anymore. When Elara entered Aiden's office, the last thing she expected was to find him standing by floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the city. The sight of him there, alone, with the sunlight casting shadows on his sharp features, made her heart race for reasons she couldn't explain. He turned toward her as soon as she walked in. "You came," he said, voice smooth but with an edge of something deeper, something she couldn't quite place. "I didn't have much of a choice," she replied, her words sharper than she intended. Aiden smiled, but it was fleeting. "I have something important to discuss," he said, motioning for her to sit. "We're going public with the marriage." Elara blinked, stunned. "What?" "Aiden, no. That wasn't the deal." His eyes were fixed on hers, his gaze intense. "It's not just about us anymore, Elara. It's about what's best for both of us. I need you to be seen with me, for appearances." You're my wife now, and we both have roles to play. She didn't respond immediately, her mind racing. This was crossing the line. The boundaries they'd set, they were already breaking. And what does that mean? She asked quietly. I need you to attend an event tonight. A gala. There will be press, interviews. He stepped closer, his voice lowering. You'll need to act like my wife. Her pulse quickened at the thought. Act like his wife. Her breath caught as Aiden reached out and gently touched her chin, lifting her face to meet his. His touch was careful but deliberate. Don't worry. It's just for show. His thumb brushed across her lower lip, and Alara's breath hitched. She stepped back quickly, pulling away from his touch. I'm not doing this, she said firmly. I don't care what you think, we're supposed to be keeping this private. Aiden's expression darkened, but there was a flicker of something. Was it frustration? Or something else? He exhaled slowly, running a hand through his dark hair. Alara, you know as well as I do that this is a business decision. If we want this to work, the marriage, the arrangement, we have to play by the rules. It's not just about us anymore. It's bigger than that. She swallowed hard, trying to push away the nervous lump in her throat. I don't like it, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't either, Aiden said quietly. But sometimes, sacrifices need to be made. That night, Alara stood before the mirror in a sleek, black evening gown that Aiden had selected for her. It was beautiful, the way it clung to her curves, but it made her feel exposed. Vulnerable. The gala was being held at one of the most exclusive venues in the city. Aiden had arranged for photographers and reporters to be there. She thought about backing out, but she knew that was impossible now. She was already too deep into this tangled mess. When she arrived at the venue, Aiden was waiting for her. He looked impossibly handsome in a tuxedo, his dark eyes meeting hers as she approached. You look stunning, he said, his voice soft but genuine. Despite herself, Alara felt a flutter in her chest. She glanced at him. But quickly looked away. I don't know about this, Aiden, she whispered, her voice tense. We'll be fine, he said, offering his arm. Just follow my lead. As they entered the venue, cameras flashed, and reporters immediately started shouting questions. Alara felt like a deer caught in the headlights. But Aiden stood tall, his arm around her waist, leading her through the crowd with ease. His presence, so confident and strong, seemed to ease her own nerves, even if she didn't want it to. Later in the evening, after mingling with several high-profile guests and answering questions about their marriage, Aiden took her aside to a quieter corner of the grand ballroom. I know this isn't easy for you, he said, his voice low and sincere. Alara met his gaze, her breath catching in her throat. I'm not doing this because I want to, she said softly. I don't like being on display. Aiden's gaze softened for a moment, but then he leaned in, brushing his lips lightly against her ear. I'm sorry, Alara. I didn't mean for it to be this hard, he whispered, his voice making her skin tingle. Without thinking, she turned to face him. The air between them seemed charged, thick with unspoken words. Then, before she could stop herself, Alara leaned in. Their lips met, it lingered, the more it felt real. When they finally pulled away, Aiden's eyes were dark, and his breath was ragged. I didn't expect that, he said quietly, his voice almost a whisper. Alara didn't know what to say. Her mind was spinning. This wasn't supposed to happen. They were supposed to be pretending. But she couldn't ignore the pull between them anymore. This marriage was already becoming something more. The kiss from the gala haunted Alara long after they returned home. Neither of them said a word on the drive back. The tension between them was thick, as if neither wanted to acknowledge what had just happened. But the way Aiden's hand occasionally brushed against hers on the leather seat, the way his eyes flicked toward her as though watching for a reaction, told her everything had changed. When they arrived at the house, Elara hesitated in the hallway. "Good night," she finally whispered, her voice shaky, turning to head toward her room. But Aiden's hand shot out, catching her wrist. "Elara." She turned, meeting his intense gaze, her heart thudding painfully against her chest. "We need to talk," he said quietly. She shook her head, her throat dry. "I'm tired, Aiden. I can't do this right now." His grip loosened, but he didn't let her go completely. "Please," he whispered. Sitting across from each other in the dim light of the living room, Elara nervously toyed with the edge of a cushion. "About what happened at the gala." She began, but Aiden cut her off. "That wasn't part of the plan," he said, his voice low but serious. "I know." She swallowed hard. "And yet," he leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. Herself glancing at him over her coffee cup. There was something different about him, gentler, softer. Finally, she broke the silence. "I thought about what you said last night," she murmured. Aiden tensed slightly but nodded. "Yeah. I don't know what this is," she said, setting her fork down. "But maybe, we don't have to figure it all out right now. Maybe we can just, see where it goes." Aiden's eyes lit up with a quiet relief. "I can live with that," he said softly. "One condition though," she added, raising a brow. "Oh. No more sneaky kisses in front of cameras," she said, smirking. He laughed, a real, genuine laugh that made her chest tighten. "I'll try to behave," he promised, reaching out to take her hand. And for the first time since they signed that ridiculous contract, Elara felt like maybe, just maybe, this fake marriage could turn into something real. The days after that morning felt like a delicate balancing act. Elara and Aiden moved around each other like two dancers learning a new routine, careful, tentative, but somehow finding rhythm in the uncertainty. There were stolen moments, the brush of hands over coffee mugs, lingering glances across rooms, but no declarations. Not yet. It was clear to both of them that something had changed, but neither was ready to acknowledge the full weight of it. One evening, just a few days later, Aiden's phone buzzed on the coffee table. Elara, seated across from him in the cozy living room, caught a glimpse of the screen. The name Diana flashed, and Elara's heart skipped a beat. "Who's that?" she asked before she could stop herself. Aiden looked up from his phone, his expression unreadable. "A client," he said casually, but his eyes told a different story. Elara's brow furrowed. "A client?" "Yeah, she wanted to discuss a business opportunity," Aiden added, tapping his phone as he read the message. Elara nodded but didn't say anything else. A small part of her felt a pang of jealousy, even though she had no reason to feel that way. Diana was a business associate, nothing more. At least, that's what she told herself. Aiden glanced at her, noticing the tightness around her eyes. "Elara," he began softly, his voice gentle. "I know what you're thinking, and it's not what you think." She swallowed, meeting his gaze. "It's fine. I don't mind." But it wasn't fine. She didn't want to feel this way. It was too complicated. Aiden set his phone down and moved closer, his presence overwhelming. "You're not fine," he said, his tone soft but insistent. "Talk to me." Elara bit her lip, unsure of how to respond. "I don't know if I can," she whispered. Aiden's hand found hers, gentle and reassuring. "You can, Elara. Whatever it is, you can talk to me." For a moment, everything else fell away. They were no longer the business partners caught in a contract. They were simply two people trying to navigate the mess of emotions that had become their reality. "I don't want to share you with anyone else," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Aiden didn't hesitate. "You don't have to." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Elara felt a rush of emotion overwhelm her, her heart pounding in her chest. Was this really happening? Was he saying what she thought he was saying? Before she could say anything more, his phone buzzed again. Diana again, he said, glancing at the screen. She's inviting me to dinner. I don't know if I should go. Ilara's heart sank. You should go, she said quickly, her voice trembling. You're a businessman, after all. Aiden stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Ilara, he said quietly, do you trust me? She froze, meeting his eyes. What? Do you trust me? He repeated, his voice low. Her heart raced, and for a moment, she didn't know how to answer. Did she trust him? What did trust even mean in a relationship like theirs? Yes, she said finally, her voice soft but firm. I do. Aiden nodded slowly, his gaze softening. Then let me prove it. That evening, Aiden left for dinner with Diana. Ilara, trying to ignore the fluttering in her stomach, stayed behind. She told herself it was just business, that she had no right to feel jealous or insecure. They weren't together, not truly. They were just two people thrown into a situation that neither had asked for. But as the hours ticked by, she couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Aiden. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you feel insecure. But I'm thinking of you. Always. Aiden. She stared at the message, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. He was thinking of her. After everything, after the gala, after the tension and the complications, Aiden was still thinking of her. Her heart ached as she typed a quick reply. I trust you. Always. She put her phone down and went to the kitchen to distract herself. But no matter what she did, her mind kept returning to the question that had been gnawing at her, was Aiden really serious about her? Or was she just a temporary distraction in his life? Just as Ilara began to lose herself in her thoughts, the doorbell rang. She opened the door to find Aiden standing there, his expression unreadable. I came back early, he said quietly. I couldn't stay there. Not with you on my mind. Ilara's heart skipped a beat. Aiden, she whispered. Without a word, he stepped inside, and the world seemed to shrink around them. There was nothing but the two of them, the tension, the longing, the unspoken words. I don't want to hide anymore, Ilara, he said, his voice raw. Not from you. Not from myself. And with that, he reached for her, pulling her into a kiss that was deep, slow, and full of everything they had been avoiding. The world outside faded, leaving just the two of them. It was the beginning of something neither of them had expected, but it felt right. For the first time, Ilara let go of her fears and allowed herself to feel what had been the next few days felt like a blur. Everything had shifted between Ilara and Aiden, but neither of them knew how to define it yet. There was a quiet, unspoken understanding that had blossomed into something tender, something fragile and beautiful. But as much as they wanted to give in to the new bond forming between them, the tension in the air was undeniable. Their pasts, their secrets, the things they'd never said, hovered between them like an uninvited guest. Ilara could feel it, the weight of all they had yet to address. One Saturday afternoon, Aiden suggested they take a walk in the park. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it felt like one. It felt like the kind of moment where they could breathe, away from the whirlwind of business meetings and the stress of their professional lives. Ilara agreed without hesitation, though her heart thudded with uncertainty. She needed to know where they stood, where she stood. As they strolled down the cobbled paths, the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the lush greenery. The park was quiet, save for the occasional rustle of leaves and the soft laughter of children playing in the distance. Aiden walked a little ahead, his hands buried in his pockets, his shoulders tense. Ilara couldn't help but wonder what he was thinking. I've been meaning to ask you something, Ilara said, her voice breaking the silence. Aiden turned to look at her, his gaze sharp. What is it? Ilara paused for a moment, unsure of how to phrase the question that had been on her mind for days. "What are we doing, Aiden?" she asked quietly, her voice vulnerable. He stopped in his tracks, looking at her with an intensity that made her heart race. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what are we?" she clarified, her eyes searching his. "You kissed me, but we've never talked about what this is, about where it's going. I don't want to be left wondering." Aiden sighed, rubbing the back of his neck as he looked down at the ground for a moment. "I don't know," he admitted. "I don't have all the answers, Elara. I never expected any of this, not with you, not with the way we've started." Elara swallowed, a pang of hurt tugging at her chest. "So, what does that mean? You're just confused." "No," Aiden said quickly, his eyes meeting hers. "I'm not confused. But this isn't something I can rush into either. My life is messy. Yours is too. But that doesn't mean I don't care about you." Elara felt her chest tighten. "I care about you too, Aiden. But I need to know, are you serious about this? About me?" "They're all along." As Aiden stepped closer to her, his face softening. "I am serious. But I need to be sure that this is what we both want. I can't promise anything, but I can promise that I'm here. Right here, with you." Elara took a step back, trying to process his words. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust him. But there was a part of her that was still unsure. "I need time," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I understand," Aiden replied gently. "I'm not going anywhere. Take all the time you need." Later that evening, Elara sat by her window, looking out at the city below. The lights twinkled in the distance, and the streets hummed with life. But inside, she felt hollow. She had her answer, and it wasn't the one she'd wanted. Aiden was sincere, but they were both too wounded, too scarred by their pasts to dive headfirst into something that could end in heartbreak. She wasn't ready to open herself up completely, not yet. Not when everything felt so fragile. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Aiden. "I know we're both scared. But I'm willing to take this slow. For you. For us." Her heart fluttered as she read the words. They were simple, but they meant everything. She quickly typed her reply. "I'm scared too. But I'm willing to try." The following week, things between them felt different. There was a newfound sense of openness, of honesty. They spoke more freely, shared more of themselves with each passing day. But in the quiet corners of their hearts, they both knew they were still treading carefully. One evening, as they sat together in Aiden's apartment, sipping wine, the conversation took a more serious turn. "Elara," Aiden began, his voice unusually serious. "There's something I need to tell you. Something that's been weighing on me for a while now." Elara looked up, concern flickering in her chest. "What is it?" "I've never been the kind of man who believes in fairy tales," Aiden said, his eyes locking onto hers. "But something about you makes me think maybe I was wrong." Elara's heart skipped a beat, the words taking her completely off guard. "Aiden, He reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "I don't know where this is going, but I don't want to miss the chance to find out with you." The sincerity in his voice, the vulnerability in his eyes, it was enough to break down the walls Elara had built around her heart. Without saying another word, she leaned in, closing the distance between them. That had been simmering for so long. The sky had turned a soft gray by morning, heavy clouds looming over the city. Elara stood by the window of Aiden's apartment, watching as raindrops trailed down the glass, her heart matching the storm outside, restless, uncertain, but yearning for something she couldn't fully name. Their joining night before had felt like something breaking free, like all the walls she had built around her heart were finally falling. Yet, she was still afraid to believe in something real, afraid to let herself be vulnerable. Behind her, Aiden was quiet. He sat on the couch, flipping through his tablet, but she could feel his eyes on her. He had been watching her like that all morning, careful, gentle, as though he could sense that she was ready to run away again. Finally, she turned to face him. "Aiden," she began, her voice soft but trembling slightly, "what are we doing?" Aiden looked up, setting the tablet aside. His eyes met hers, dark and serious. "I thought we were figuring that out together," he said quietly. She bit her lip, struggling to hold back the emotions swelling in her chest. "I'm scared," she whispered. It feels too good to be real." Aiden stood and walked to her, reaching out to take her hands gently in his. "Elara," he said, voice low and intense, "it is real. Everything I feel for you, it's real." She searched his eyes, still unsure if she could trust what she saw there. "But why me?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Why, when you could have anyone?" Aiden's gaze softened as he cupped her face in his hands, brushing a thumb along her cheek. "Because you're the first person who's ever made me want to be better," he said, his voice filled with quiet emotion. "Because when I'm with you, I don't have to pretend to be someone I'm not. You make me feel alive." Her breath hitched as her heart fluttered. "I know I've made mistakes, Elara," he continued, "and I know I didn't make this easy for us. But if you give me a chance, I'll prove to you that this is more than just some game or contract." The rain outside began to fall harder, the sound creating a cocoon around them as if the world had faded away, leaving only them in their fragile, growing bond. "I want to believe you," Elara whispered. Aiden leaned his forehead against hers, closing his eyes as if savoring her nearness. "Then do," he whispered back. "Believe in me. Believe in us." Suddenly, as if overcome by the emotion of the moment, Elara pulled away and moved toward the door. "I need some air," she said quickly, her chest rising and falling with every breath. "Elara," Aiden called out, but she was already gone, the door clicking softly behind her. Elara walked through the city streets, the rain soaking her clothes, but she didn't care. Her thoughts swirled like the storm clouds above, everything Aiden had said, every moment they had shared, every kiss that still burned on her lips. She found herself standing in the middle of the park where they had walked days earlier. Now empty, the rain drenching the benches and trees, everything smelled like earth and water. She tilted her head back, letting the rain hit her face, tears mingling with the drops on her cheeks. Suddenly, strong arms wrapped around her from behind. She gasped, but when she turned her head, Aiden was there, completely soaked but completely focused on her. "You think you can run from me?" he said softly, almost smiling but with sadness in his eyes. "Aiden." She breathed, her heart thundering in her chest. "I told you I'm not going anywhere," he whispered, leaning closer. "Even if you try to run, I'll follow. Every time." Her lips trembled. "Why are you here?" "Because you're here," he said simply. "Because you're what I want. Not the company, not the contract. You." She looked at him, rain pouring between them, and all her doubts began to fall away. "Aiden, I don't know how to do this," she said, voice cracking. "Then let's figure it out together," he said, stepping closer, cupping her face in his hands. "I'm not asking for forever, I'm asking for right now. For a chance." Their eyes met, and for the first time, Elara let herself believe. Without another word, Aiden leaned in and giving her a deep feeling, every broken piece they were trying to mend began coming together. Elara wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him closer as the rain fell harder, soaking them both to the bone but neither of them caring. "I'm scared," she whispered against his lips. "So am I," he admitted. "But I'd rather be scared with you than without you." When they finally pulled away, breathless, Aiden pressed his forehead to hers. "Let's stop running, Elara," he murmured. "Let's stop pretending we don't want this." She nodded slowly, tears mixing with rain on her cheeks. "Okay," she whispered. "No more running. Back at Aiden's apartment, they dried off, still exchanging quiet smiles and shy glances, as if they were afraid this peace might shatter. Ilara sat on the couch, wrapped in one of his warm sweaters, watching as he moved around the kitchen making tea. "You know," he said, glancing over his shoulder with a grin, "I've never chased anyone like that before." She smiled softly. "Maybe you never had a reason to." "Maybe," he agreed, sitting beside her, handing her a cup. As she sipped her tea, she leaned against him, feeling his arms slide around her shoulders, pulling her close. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "I'm glad you did." Aiden kissed the top of her head. "Me too." The next morning, the rain had finally ceased, leaving the city soaked and glistening under the pale light of the early sun. Ilara woke up to the smell of coffee and the soft sound of Aiden moving about in the kitchen. She stretched, feeling the soft sheets around her, her body still warm from the night before. She hesitated for a moment, unsure of how the day would unfold. The weight of their kiss, their confession, and the promises made under the storm lingered in her heart, but there was something new, hope, maybe. Or was it fear? She couldn't decide. She slipped out of bed, finding him in the kitchen. Aiden was humming to himself, flipping. Let go of the world she'd built for herself, the independence, the safety of her own rules. But Aiden had made it clear that he was no longer asking for anything more than her trust. He was willing to wait. It wasn't until they stood together at sunset, walking along the edge of the city's skyline, that Ilara realized how much had changed in such a short time. Aiden had his arm around her, the evening breeze gently tousling their hair as they looked out at the horizon, a world full of unknowns. "So," Aiden said, voice teasing but filled with sincerity, "how are you feeling about everything?" Ilara's gaze softened, her heart swelling as she glanced at him. I'm scared," she admitted. "But I think, for the first time, I'm willing to be scared for something real." Aiden stopped walking and turned to face her. His expression softened, and he reached out to gently lift her chin. "That's all I ask," he said quietly. "Just take the leap. You don't have to know everything right now. We'll figure it out as we go." She nodded, the uncertainty still lingering but somehow less terrifying. "Okay," she whispered, her voice barely audible against the rush of the wind. "We'll figure it out."